right, welcome back to another episode of That's My Dad. We got Cris Mahy here in the studio with us. Welcome, Cris. Good to have you.
Wow, it's great to be here, Scott. Thanks for inviting me.
So, Cris, what's your claim to fame? Is it your three kids?
Actually, I would say yes.
Yeah,
my three kids.
Let's start there.
Yeah, 3 kids, 3 grandkids, awesome wife. And I think, too, I was so excited about coming and sharing just because of you've heard the commercial before, this is worth this, but this is priceless.
Yeah.
And kids and grandkids are priceless in my life. So I was excited to share that.
Let's get started. Just tell me about your kids.
Well, I've got 3. First one is Nathan. He's the oldest. He's around late 30s right now. He probably wouldn't want me to tell how old he is, but late 30s. Jordan's a couple years behind him. He's my second. Then Karina is our youngest, and she was actually adopted about 16 years ago. And so adopted her from Ukraine.
Beautiful young lady.
Yeah, awesome kids. I mean, you think in life the things you want to accomplish, but I think the most valuable things is you can look at your wife and your kids and see what really is worth something. Yeah. And so, yeah.
Tell us about Mercy's Hope. I want to hear about that.
Oh, my goodness. I would love to go into the long version, but it was back in 2004, and I actually can remember praying, just asking God. I knew there was more, and I felt like at that point in my life, I was receiving and hearing some things from him, but I remember praying this prayer, and we all know, have heard before, be careful what you pray for, but this was something that changed my life dramatically, and I prayed for God's father heart. I said, please give me your father heart. Well, then, of course, it was a good bit of time later, I was invited to Ukraine by a very good friend that has since passed away, and he served on a ministry board from England, and they served orphan kids in Ukraine. So lo and behold, a miracle, I ended up receiving a revised passport, an updated passport, and the visa, and within just a couple of weeks, ended up in Ukraine. And the first couple of days, I was like, God, yeah, I know you wanted me here, but it just seems like, I haven't seen it yet. And so I was there taking pictures for this ministry. The third day there, we went to an orphanage, and this orphanage was about 2 hours from where we were staying at the time. And I was with a group of other people that were actually on this ministry board from England. So I thought, okay, cool, we're going to go see an orphanage. And at that time, we were fairly involved with Big Oak Ranch. We had we were what we call resource parents. And so we had several kids that came and lived with us for weekends and so forth. So I thought I knew orphan kids, because I'd been around them, and thought I had a good handle on what that was and what that meant until this trip in Ukraine. And went to this orphanage. They showed us around the building, which I didn't want to see the building. I want to see kids. And so finally they took us in this room, and the music began to play. And all these kids came in just dressed in this attire, like, I guess, traditional folk Ukrainian dress up. And so they started dancing to this music. And as I watched that, I began just to become emotional. And this one little girl, I'll never forget, she was probably about 10, kept looking at me and looking away, almost in shame. But look at me, smile, and look away. And it's like... And it rocked me. And what happened after that was just an experience and an encounter with God that I'll never forget. In fact, when I even think about it, I get emotional because it was out, like from inside out. I heard this voice say, pray Jeremiah 29:11 over those kids. So I began to pray. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for good and not for harm, for a hope and a future. And as I prayed, I began to weep. And I saw that girl again, and some other kids started getting my attention. And these people that were with me thought I was crazy. What's going on? You got sick or something? And I really began to weep. And at that time, I felt it was just like God took me and plugged me into 220. And I started shaking. I started shaking and crying. And it just was like, I couldn't I couldn't control myself. And I was even taking pictures during this time. Finally kind of got myself together, and they were ending their program. And all the kids, this one particular girl just rocked me. And it was like she was seeing right into my spirit, my soul. And they all left the room, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm never going to see them again, And right when all this was happening, I knew what it was. It was like God was saying, take these kids to be yours. And I said, and I'm calling you to be a father. And I remember saying to God, I said, well, I'm already a dad. And he said, no, you didn't hear me. I'm calling you to be a father. And after that, I lost it again, and then finally got myself together. And I thought, okay, the kids are gone. The people started talking. We were kind of walking around, and all of a sudden, 2 boys came back in the room. And I wanted to talk to them. Of course, I couldn't because they only speak Russian, Ukrainian. And then all of a sudden, all the kids started coming back in the room. And I was like, oh, my goodness, maybe I'm going to meet this little girl. And so then the kids saw my camera, and they wanted to get a picture with me. So I sat in a chair and gave the camera to somebody, one of the folks that was with me. And just as I sat down, you know who came over and sat in my lap?
The little girl.
The girl. And at that point, I started losing it again, but I knew I had to keep it together for the picture. So, they took the picture, and I got a picture with her, and it turned out there's her 2 brothers. I didn't know she had brothers. And then that was it. After that, I was like, oh, my goodness, where do I sign? I want to take them home. I had no idea about the adoption process, none. It was clueless. And so to make a long story short, went home. I said, Karen, we've got to adopt. And she said, say what? And she was like, I don't know what you ate over there. We got to get you better. And so after that, it was a series of events that happened. But eventually, we started the adoption process. We went back to Ukraine almost 9 months later, after we started the adoption process, and through another series of events, ended up going to probably the most remote part of Ukraine, which still had some communist stronghold, and met Karina, and ended up adopting her. So what happened was we were getting ready to bring her home after the court case, and we were there a lot longer in Ukraine than we felt like we were going to be. In fact, almost 3 months. And so we had adopted her. We had to leave her for 30 days. Ukraine law says you have to leave, and gives chance for whoever, family members or whatever, to petition for her not to be adopted. So we left her for 30 days, came back. We were getting ready to come home. And I told the government officials when we were there, said, someday we'll bring her back. And at that time they said, no, we'll never see her again. We know that you'll take her, and she's probably not going to be in a good place. And they thought that we were going to do all kinds of stuff to her, and it was just awful. We brought her home. A year later, I actually went back to see the children, and in the orphanage, there were about 80 kids in that orphanage. When we left originally, they were calling us mom and dad, and they were crying. The orphanage officials didn't know to keep us from the kids. Typically, when you go to adopt, all you can meet with is your child you're potentially going to adopt, and that's pretty common in most countries. They didn't know that. So when we would visit with Karina, we visited with almost 80 other children. Oh. So by the time we left, they were calling us mom and dad, and they were crying, and they were like, of course, they're speaking Russian. We couldn't tell, but through the interpreter, we found out they were just, when are you coming back? Don't leave me, and why is Karina so lucky, and I'm just really emotional. So we took Karina home. I came back a year later, and the orphanage was very reluctant to let me in because government a law states you cannot go into an orphanage unless you have official permission, which we'd already adopted Karina, so we really didn't have permission. A year after that, brought Karina back, and I can remember sitting in the offices of those government officials, and they actually were so moved to see her, they began to cry. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on? And And we said, well, here's Karina. And I told you that God would make a difference in her life. And you can see. And they said, through their tears and just being so emotional, here this really very staunch Russian people were emotional, and which is very, very unusual. And they said, at that time, you said you'd bring her back, and we didn't believe you. But now we want to tell you that just because of your faithfulness of bringing her back, we not only will open up the orphanage to you anytime you want to come, you can bring anybody you want with you and tell them about your God. And that's how Mercy's Hope started. And so we would come year after year bringing teams and going into the orphanage. And within about 10 years, Scott, that orphanage had to close because there were no more kids. They were all adopted and given
that's
to
incredible.
Christian families. Yeah.
And that's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
Let me go back and there's something that brought Chris May to the point that he's a compassionate guy. And by the way, you're on staff at the Church of the Highlands in Gadsden. You and Karen helped kind of bring that congregation here, I guess is the way to
God
say it.
used some of our relationship, and we've been here now 6 years, I think, 6 going on 7.
But I want to go back way back.
Okay.
I want to go back way back and ask you about your dad,
Yeah.
your family.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
My dad was really an incredible man. He was he was a college professor, a school teacher, college professor. Was actually from Canada, and his parents, my grandparents, were pastors in the Salvation Army, and so his background was very much that. He was a consummate musician, very, I mean, just such a high level musicianhood, and so he brought all of us kids, or 4 of us, up that way. And so I started very early on in the music industry, or in the music area, and being wrapped and letting that be pretty involved in my life. Obviously, as a kid, sports were important and so forth, but he always put an emphasis on that. And growing up, there were some things about my dad that have really stuck with me. And even as I was really recalling before coming today, some things that he instilled in my life were major. And he was a very dedicated man. He loved us. As many in that generation, they didn't necessarily verbalize it a lot, right. But he wouldn't fail to hug us. But some things that really impacted me were every Sunday after church, he wouldn't go and sleep or do his own thing. He would gather all of us kids together and go out to the local park, and we would play for 2 hours or more. And that started very young, but then eventually more kids would come and stay at our house, and we had more and more kids, and they would come. But what would happen is they would all not want us to come to their house. They wanted to come to ours because we were playing these games, and hang out with them.
You're saying he was involved in all this?
Yeah, he was out there. I can remember even in high school when I thought I was a macho athlete, and I can remember playing tag football and laying him on the ground, I got to do this. And later thinking, what, Chris, what did you just do? You just put your dad on the ground. But afterwards, not just after, but later, thinking back, I realized, oh my goodness, that was an incredible sacrifice. And what he was instilling was a consistent involvement in our lives. Mm-hmm. And obviously there'd be other times he went to school a lot of his life. So a lot of what I remember is when he would be off at university getting a higher degree, and so he would be gone summers, but he still, despite that, was very intentional of spending time with us.
So how many of you were there?
There were 4 of us.
4 of you.
Yeah, I was the oldest of 4.
I've been asking a question that I'm just taking a little survey. There's not a right or wrong answer, but I'm just kind of wondering, how often did your family sit down for dinner together?
Those were we were a family that I think probably a lot of families back in the very middle class, if not less. Very seldom did we go out to eat. As a matter of fact, a an incredible privilege was going to McDonald's, and my dad was a coupon guy, so he would pull these little coupons and give us, you receive a burger and then you get a free fry, or something like that. Yeah. So he would give those to us. It was funny, even after I was married, we'd come home and we'd go to McDonald's, he'd all give us coupons, So he'd still do it when we were older, but we just did not eat out much, so we ate at home. Yeah. And those times around the table were extremely valuable. As a matter of fact, I even did this with my kids, but once in a while it would be family meeting night, and so we would eat dinner, and then afterwards he'd call it a family conference. And so we thought that was just a big word for, oh no, what's Dad going to talk about now, But once in a while he would share a scripture verse, or he would just talk about different family issues, something going on, maybe maybe something going on in the family, or even something relative to what was happening in the nation at the time. When I would try family conferences, and I don't remember me reacting this way, but I know 100% I did. But my boys were like, "Oh man, another family conference," and so they would react like, "Oh my goodness, what are we doing this for?" And but I remember, I'm going to see this through, because I know it impacted me, even though I probably didn't like it, but it showed me that he cared enough to not just verbalize something, but to allow us to be a part of communication and dialogue that you don't see in families nowadays. And so that's what I grew up with.
Yeah, we're discovering that most of the people who we interview whose children have gone on to really do great things, they say, yeah, man, we had dinner 5 times a week. It's amazing, as busy as folks are, that they can do that. So as a father, what do you think it takes for you to be a great dad?
Number one, I realized I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to be present.
Okay, good.
Number two, to be interested and involved in their life. Don't be separate. And it doesn't mean be a hovering parent, but it does mean be interested, and truly, not just faking it, but truly be interested in them. Also authentic in putting the interest of them in front of yourself.
Well, you can't be selfish,
That's exactly right. You can't be selfish. Another one I wrote down was be intentional, not swayed by the reactions or responses. And the story I told you of having family conferences, or I would do fun things like at New Year's, like letting everybody paint what the whole year meant to them, or I would, just different things like that. And sometimes I go, "Oh, really, Dad?" That's just like, But I realized I can't be swayed because they think it's silly, because later they're going to go, "Oh my goodness," and some way that's going to impact them.
And so, sometimes dads just have to be kind of goofy. We just have to accept the fact that they're going to think, "Oh, he's weird."
Right.
One day they'll understand.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think that. I really do.
Yeah, I do too.
And then another thing I think is really important before the last one is speak consistently and powerfully into their future. I think many times as a dad, we miss that. And what I mean by speak into their future, the Bible says you can speak things that are not as though they are. And that's something, as a dad, you have authority spiritually into your children's life. And I think it's so important. I did that with my boys at night when I put them to bed, and I pray for them, but I would speak different things in their life, not really even realizing then what I was doing. And then with Karina, I was very intentional of speaking into her life. Wow. I can remember before she stepped on the plane the first time coming home with us, and the orphanage directors and the government officials said she's sickly. She'll never be healthy in her life. She's dumb. She'll never they're going to give me. She'll never amount to anything. And I can remember before stepping on that plane, I said, "God, she is going to be healthy and she is going to be intelligent and smart, and she's going to rise above the words that were spoken to her.
And she's all of that today.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, and let me just give you one example. She didn't have an easy time in high school, but it was adjusting. She never knew English at 11 years old, and so she had to catch up. But finally, she went to Southern Union for a couple of years on a dance scholarship, took 4 years off and worked in different things, returned back to Auburn, because my background's architecture, and she came to me one day and wanted to be in architecture, and I was like, oh, baby, really? That's really hard. But she really wanted to. She wanted to pursue that. And Scott, she went to Auburn. Out of the 6 semesters, she was on the honor roll 5 times, 5 of those.
So this little girl that the officials said. Yeah.
And she graduated. I mean, I didn't even approach that myself, but it was whatever that is, laudo cum laude,
Yeah.
And as she walked down, as she stood up when they acknowledged her at the graduation at Auburn, Karen and I bawled, because it wasn't anything about us. It was just the miracle of God in her life. So that's what I mean by speaking into their future. And I believe it is absolutely so important and vital and real.
I want to give you a chance to speak to your dad, 89 years old.
Okay. All right.
And what we're going to do is have you look into this camera right here.
All right.
And I just want you to say whatever you want to. What do you want to say to your dad?
Dad, first of all, I want to tell you that that I love you deeply and truly, and I so appreciate in more ways than you could imagine, the consistency and the value you put in us as children. I thank you for being faithful, first of all and foremost, to God, and being a powerful intercessor on our part. I know you spent many, many mornings lifting us up in prayer that we didn't even know about until later. And I want to thank you for the investment you made in all of our lives. I thank you that you instilled in me, by the presence of God and the power of the Holy Spirit, what it means to be a dad, and the value that is so important that we put on others, our own children, our wife, by elevating her to what God has intended, and then to others. And I want to tell you that because of the way that you lived your life, my life is better. And I want to tell you thank you, and I love you more than you'll ever know.
Cris, your kids have sent you a little gift, and I think there may even be a surprise there for you.
Oh, really?
Nathan's going to show you that.
Hey, Dad, I just want to thank you just for being a father, a friend, and a mentor in my life, in Jordan and Karina's life, and honestly in so many others' lives. You took it upon yourself to be a father to the fatherless, especially to the orphans in Ukraine, and you've just showed our entire family what it is to have a servant's heart but a father's heart. And I want to thank you so much for that. And I can't wait to be able to express that to my kids, to Pax and Paisley, and also to other kids all around the world. So thank you so much for that. One thing I love about my dad, but it also drives me insane, is how long he takes doing certain things, especially when we're with the family. But over the years, I've realized the reason he takes so long doing things is because he wants to enjoy every single moment. And that's one thing he's taught me, is it doesn't matter what you're doing, especially when you're with friends and family, enjoy it, soak it in, take it in, and love every minute that you have with your people.
Go. Hey, Papa, it's me and Paige. Thank you for playing baseball with me. I love you.
Can you say hi? Yeah, that's Hugh. That's right. Say hi, Hugh. Say hi to Papa. Hi. That's Hugh. That's my little guy, and he's probably going to talk throughout this whole thing. But I am Jordan. Yeah. So I'm Chris's second son, middle child between Nathan and Karina. And I'm here today to talk about Dad. So first thing I have to say is my favorite thing about Cris. So Dad, my favorite thing about you, it's no surprise to anybody who knows you, is your gentleness and your kindness. You would give the shirt off your back to anybody that's in need, and I sure know that I don't think anybody wants you to do that, because I know how poorly you tan. So let's just keep that thing on. But I know in theory you would do that for anybody. You are so gentle and kind to everyone you know. That's including friends and family in Gadsden. That's including our friends and loved ones in Ukraine. And it's certainly one of my favorite things about you, although there are many gems that make up Christopher Carl May. But Dad, I love that you are a gentle and kind man. Love you.
So the thing that I love the most about you is how loving and caring you are to those around you, and how you will do anything to help. My favorite story about you is you and your friends eating an El Tapatio for like a month and then getting some type of award and discount. I think that's hilarious, but so awesome. And then I want to thank you for always encouraging me and our family to be our best, to do our best, and for teaching me how to love others. I appreciate you and I love you so much.
Hello from Ukraine.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I don't know how I can say something in very short time, because my English can take only 1 hour for speech. But I will try, because not only me must stay here, but also 1,000 kids who wants to say thank you so much, Cris. And we wanna we really appreciate for all of what you're doing for us, for all of your big heart for us. And from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you so much, and we love you. And thank you for one day you asked me, can I become your spiritual father? And as you know, I don't have in my vocabulary, I don't have word father. So I accepted. I was confused, but I accepted. And I'm so thankful, because you changed my life. After God, you changed my life, because you became my father. And I am so appreciative, so thankful. I pray for you. And let's pray together for Ukraine, because I really want to see you again here. We love you. Glory to Ukraine. And let's stop war together.
Wow.
Wow, I think I'm speechless now.
Something that I was watching my sons, and I wrote this down. I didn't say it, but there's not much better in life than seeing your investment in your kids translate into them raising their kids. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I just am speechless, you know, when I have that opportunity to see that and to hear that. And the last person that spoke was Alona Kovalenko, which there are a number of Ukrainian, now they're adults, that are my spiritual kids, and she is one that was fatherless. She didn't have a father. She has a mother, but not a father. And early on, it was probably been 10, 12 years ago, God asked me to ask her if I could be her spiritual father, which there isn't a father. It's Papa in Ukrainian. But and since then, she has blossomed and has evolved into this incredible, powerful woman of God that has made an incredible difference. And so all that to say, the investment in your kids is worth it.
That's right.
So Thank you so much, Scott.
I think you've inspired somebody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
I don't have anything else to say. That concludes this episode of That's My Dad, where we're inspiring fathers to become great dads, and we're seeking to break generational cycles of fatherlessness. See you next week.